All right. Welcome everyone to a getting started guide for 3D Print Manager. I'm just going to kind of run through hopefully every part of the program and hopefully I don't forget anything, but we'll see what happens. And we're just going to jump right in. So to start, of course, you've got a first time setup wizard after you install. This is pretty self-explanatory. The biggest decision here is if you're going to point at an existing group of files on your computer or not to get you started. It is definitely significantly faster to point at a group of files you already have if you already have some level of organization, which I'm going to imagine most people do. So I'm going to point at my own test files here that we set up. So I've organized my files by the creators I've purchased from in this example, and then we're just going to select that. I'm going to go next. We're going to auto detect the slicers you have available. If we don't pick them up because you put them somewhere unique, you can always check a box and choose their executable manually. And that's just so we can set up printers with different defaults and stuff later. All right, next you can choose whether or not you want to use cloud features. In this demo I will, but of course you do not have to. Wait 1 second while I get signed in. It pops open a browser tab, but I don't want to dock my login information. So give me just a second. All right, now it's going to index those files after, oh, right, I got to choose enable cloud. And now we're going to index all the files I just pointed at. Importing into the library can take a lot longer because that might involve copying files, decompressing files, moving files across different disk drives. So there's a lot of extra time, but when you just point to a bunch of files that already exist, the setup time is much faster because we're not actually copying or moving files anywhere. Oh, let me drag this down into view. Shrink this a little bit. All right, so we can see one of the cool features of this application already, which is we have thumbnails of art that creators included in their files. So when you purchase files from somewhere like My Mini Factory or Kickstarter or Patreon or wherever you buy them from, if the creators include renders or JPEGs or whatever inside of the files you download and add to your library, we'll pick those up and we'll throw them onto folders as the thumbnails. Just kind of like a quality of life thing. Next, we're going to see that we have a generating here. So STL files all will have thumbnails generated for them. Here's a few. We're going through. Looks like we're still generating. Before I go on, I'm just going to let these finish generating. All right. So it looks like our thumbnails are just finishing up generating. So when creators include Lychee files, you can see there's a couple of LYS files here. Our program will match with any STL files that have similar names, and we'll throw the same files, or the same thumbnails rather, onto the LYS files, just so we get a little bit of a preview for them. Next, you can already kind of see, but we have 3D previews of our files. So I can mouse over STL files, and that allows me to interact with them. Drag, turn, I can use my mouse wheel to go in and out if I would like to. And then you can see there's also this little camera icon. I can save this as the top level static thumbnail. We can't predict what direction these are going to face. At least I haven't figured out a way yet. Maybe one day I will. So sometimes creators might have a figure that's facing away from us. So one of the nice things is being able to set the thumbnails from these 3D previews is that we can just orientate them ourselves and then snap a quick thumbnail and save it that way. But we can mouse over almost anywhere in the application so far. If there's an STL file, you should be able to mouse over it and scroll around it and interact with it like this. Let's go up a couple levels here. We're going to see that STL files, so there was no art included with this one, it looks like. When we create STL files and the thumbnails for STL files, they will travel back up the chain of folders all the way to the top layer. So we can always have a preview of some kind throughout folder hierarchy. Next, let's talk about our different methods of organization. There's two others besides just your typical files and folders, of course. First is categories. My own preference here is I'm going to go make a category for each one of my creators that I purchased from. So I'm going to go jump into categories here. I'm going to remove these default category examples that will come included. And we'll just rename this one. Okay, there. Now I've got some categories, so we can come back to the library here. And I can assign these using the drop-down menu here. And we'll just run through this real quick, give each of these a category. Just for some additional visual aid when you're looking at the library. You can, of course, always sort by category if you would like to, or filter rather. And now if I drill into these, we can see everything beneath it that I've set the category on. It will inherit the category of its parent. However, that does not stop me from coming in here and changing the category. And then all the files under this parent would then get the category. We'll talk about settings here soon, but we can enable where we show these category cards. I got a little crazy with appearance settings, so we'll talk about those a little bit later. Next, let's talk about tagging. Let me just jump in here. So tagging can be done during import, of course, but also just when you're browsing your library if you would like to. So there's a tag section under each file, and I can come in here and we can just type a couple different tags here just for example's sake. I'm going to fill out some tags and then we'll talk about some other cool things we can do with them. You can see, just a quick example here, now that I'm starting to get tags, when I start typing for a tag, it will begin filtering. So as our tags expand, and we can all imagine, at least in my own part of the 3D printing hobby, because it's all about D&D and printing miniatures and wargaming, it can get crazy with the amount of tags I'm going to end up having later. So filtering is going to be a big requirement for me. All right, let's just do one more here, and then we'll jump into another cool tag view that we have. Okay, so we can see in our side menu here, I've got a tags section. So I click into here, I'll actually end up getting a preview of some files, usually the latest files, under each tag. And I can kind of get like a cool high-level view of each of these. Of course, I can click view all under any of them, and it's going to filter for me all the files or folders I have set for that tag, which is pretty convenient. Categories has a very similar view. If I click categories, I'll see a preview of all the files and folders under each one of those categories. And following the same pattern, I can click view all, and it's going to load a view with those folders or with those items for us so we can see them. There's some small odds and ends here. Post print, if you want to upload your own file and attach it, and you keep track of completed pictures or something like that, there is a section for completed prints on here where you can just attach a file. I'll do it right now. You can attach a file that's already inside of your library if you want to, which I'll do, or of course we can always upload a new image. Just to kind of demonstrate what that looks like. It's very simplistic. And then there is a completed prints view. So if you do that a bunch and you like that workflow, you can come in here, click completed prints, and click this and be like, oh, this is one of my completed print images, and I can see which one of my files it's attached to by clicking going to a source. Let's talk about controls within the library to help you get organized next. So this program comes with probably about the standard of file manipulation that you would expect. And what I mean by that is I can click, I can multi-select. We have some bulk controls up here. I've shrunk this for recording. There we go. Let me grow that a little bit. We've got some bulk controls up here in the bar. We also have a right click menu that has a bunch of controls as well that'll support bulk manipulation. And then we can also I don't know why I was so excited about this, but we can click and drag and move things by just dragging them around. You can also do things like control copy paste. I don't want to do this on 100 files because it'll take it'll take a minute to complete. So yeah, there's a lot of cool bulk controls we can do. Control copy, control paste, stuff like that. Now I'm going to show also what I think is a cool feature here. Give me just a second. So we have, if I go to our existing library folder, right? So this is our library, and these are all the files in our library. And let's just take a look. I moved one of our files here, this hero, to the top level folder. Everything under your library folder is going to be watched. So if I come in here and let's say I delete this hero, we're going to see this delete action take place inside of the application. If I grab, I've got just off screen here, I've got a compressed file of another mini, and I paste it into here, our program is going to pick that up and it's going to import it into that folder. So this is who I just imported. It will take and auto assign the category, of course, of the folder it gets imported into. So for those of you who still want to manipulate inside of the File Explorer, you can. You can also move things around, right? So if I can drag, and we're going to see that action follow inside of our File Explorer. Awesome. Sometimes there's a couple second delay as it picks it up, but it should be pretty safe if you want to manipulate within the File Explorer and the app. My only request is please don't try doing both at the same time because stuff will probably get broken that way. Okay, next up we have collections. Collections are exactly what it sounds like. If you want to organize files in a way that's unique across a bunch of different files, we can do that. I can create a collection here, of course, but also I can create collections right from the library. I select one of these files and I come down here. I can click add. I can create a new collection right here, and I can also just add files to collections. If you want to set custom thumbnails on a collection, you can. It'll open up a dialog here to select an existing file. If you want to use a existing file for your collection thumbnail, you can. Of course, you can always upload a custom one, and you're going to get a little preview here of what's in the collection. For creators, just for future reference, you can share collections and give out links and distribute that way if that's something you like for your workflow. All right, so now that we've covered collections, let's talk about the web libraries. So web libraries is kind of just a shortcut to getting files downloaded and into the application. But also, if you want to upload files directly from your library and you don't want to have to find them on your computer and you want to browse through your library to upload them, you can do that. I'm going to log into my mini factory here and then I'm going to demonstrate some of that for you guys. Okay, now that I'm logged into my mini factory, we're just going to go and we're going to grab just a quick file here. I don't want to spend too much time here. And I'm going to download just a couple of different files. Hopefully they're not too big. We can download multiple files at a time, and now we're just going to let these sit and download. I'm going to jump to the end. This download speed is limited by your computer's download speed. All right, so my downloads have just finished up. Now I can import these files. So I get our import dialog. And we can go and we can say, oh, I'm going to import them to DMStash. I can choose where in the library I want them to import into. We can set predetermined tags if we would like to. I don't usually on my imports just because I'm importing so many files at once. I can't have a tag that's really going to apply to all of them. We can also, if you're just trying to get all of your files into your own cloud, if you're a cloud user, you can just choose to upload only to cloud. It'll download the files, it'll generate the thumbnails for you, and then it will upload to your cloud. And then you'll be able to browse them all locally, even though they're all in the cloud, saving you some disk space. In our case, we're going to do both. I'm going to go ahead and click the import button. Usually the speed of imports is determined just like extracting a file, just like it would take to copy and paste from one drive to another. It's really about the same speed. All right, next, let's talk about the print workflow and build plates. So I'm going to jump into printers, and I'm going to add a printer. So what I have at home, I have an Elegoo Saturn 4 Ultra. We do have some print templates here to help us browse and just speed up the process of setting up printers. Because of I don't have the rights to use any of the images of printers yet, that you can choose to upload your own thumbnail of your printer if you would like. I'm hoping one day I'll be able to have stock thumbnails of all the printers in the application for everyone, just by default. We can choose a slicer. Now, the reason you can choose a slicer here is so that when we're triggering opens of our build plate files, it will determine which slicer to open the file with based on the slicer I choose on my printer. So I'm going to choose Prusa for my example here. We'll go ahead and add the printer. All right, so now that we have a printer, we can have build plates. There's a couple different ways we can make build plates. My preferred method is from our library. When I decide that it's time to print something new, we can go in here, I can select a couple files, I can right click, and then I can say add to build plate. We can create a new build plate, and let's call this bone claw. So that's the name of the file. Then I will create and add, and then we can click go to build plate to navigate there. All right, now that we're here, there's a few things going on this screen. First one is we have a quantity control. Quantity control, if we're going to print multiples of a copy, I can change it here, but we can also change it from our arranging build plate screen. If I click this button, we're going to get a new dialog that shows me a representation of my build plate according to the size on the printer that we have set. We can see that I can adjust quantity here and I can rearrange the build plate. You can also click and drag these around. If you want to arrange it yourself here in the application, you're welcome to do that. And then we can generate two types of files. If you want to try and shortcut this, we can generate a 3MF file and we can generate an STL file. So the 3MF file really only works from all my testing and experimenting with Prusa Slicer. I'm hoping I can figure out how to get them working with some other slicers like Lychee and Shitterbox. But right now it seems like I can only get them to work in Prusa. But STLs, of course, will work anywhere. So we'll generate an STL file, and I'll generate a 3MF file here in a second. The generation time varies based on how big it's going to be and how many different models are here. You can see in the background that these files are getting attached as they get generated. Awesome. So now if I hit the open and slicer button, I'm going to trigger an open in Prusa Slicer, which is way too big for my recording area. Let's give that a second. I can't actually resize it. Oops. But awesome. So we can see that it opened in Prusa Slicer, it imported, and it matches our build plate, which is fantastic. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is, oh, I guess we should actually slice something. So hang on. Let me go. I've got more settings set up in Lychee. Let me go generate a sliced file in Lychee real quick. We'll talk about attaching print files. I'm ready to slice in Lychee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this print icon. I can grab the file path to the print folder of this build plate. And then back in Lychee, when I'm choosing where I want to save the file to, if I save to the print folder, we'll let this slice. We're going to be able to import it right into our application. So I'll see you in a second once this is done slicing. Okay, so we've finished our slicing. So now if I jump back to our application, we can see that our sliced file got pulled right into our app. Or it's a little compressed here. Let me see if I can't. And so we pull print data right out of the file. We parse the metadata and we try and display it right here in the application just for convenience sake. It's been a little hit or miss in terms of sometimes the data looks good and sometimes it doesn't. For example, the print estimated time here is 1 hour and 56 minutes. In Lychee, it's definitely longer than that. So it's kind of hit or miss. I'm still playing with that and hopefully that'll improve a bit over time. All right. So our next little view for build plates. So our next view for build plates is a master view of build plates. If I come in here and I see build plates, we can see each build plate that we might have, their status. If they're still in the middle of printing, they might have a timer. So for example, if I come in here and let's go ahead and say start print, we're going to see our status change. And now I can go back to our build plate screen and I can see a timer ticking down here. I can also see a timer ticking down on the printer as well. In terms of settings for, I just mentioned the statuses here. This will lock as long as it's printing. I can mark it complete, but there's a drop-down menu of different statuses if you want to use those for your workflow. You can also customize these status names and add new ones if you want to do things for like pre-production or post-production. It just depends what you're doing. All right, next, I think we're going to move on to file sharing and file sharing controls. Let's start with creating a share. So I'm going to go in here. There's multiple ways we can create shares. As always, my most convenient way to do it is from the library. If I go, let's go ahead and do, I'm going to share this entire folder here. Well, actually, maybe I'll just share one of these. So if I right click, we can click share here. I can also click, if you want to share more than one file, you can bulk select. And you can also right click and click share, or you can use the button inside of our bulk bar here. But for our sake, we'll just do this one. So I get another little dialog here and I can create a new share name. We'll call this the super cool store share. There's a couple different types of shares. It's just email restricted or public. So when something is email restricted, that means they're going to have to enter their email before they're able to access the shares. We can enter a comma separated list of users here to add to the share, but we can also go manage users in another way inside of users and groups in this program. Just for some simplicity's sake, we're going to use share.com. Awesome. So now if I enter the share, we're going to see a couple things. We're going to see a user was created for this email address. I can preview the files that are a part of this share, and we can also remove files that are part of this share here if we would like to. From here, I can also directly add files from a file library picker here. And there's multiple views as well. So before I activate the share, let's talk about users and groups just briefly. It's exactly what you think it is. If I go to users and groups, we can just create lists of users, right? Now, these lists have different types. There's a dynamic list and there's a snapshot list. And the difference is if I have a dynamic list attached to a share, every user I add to that list will automatically be given access to every share that dynamic group is a part of. A snapshot list, at the time I add the group to a share, only all the users on that list at the time will gain access to that share. So it snapshots our list of users and it adds them onto a share. That's similar to things like Patreon. If you start paying for Patreon in October, I wouldn't get access to the things from Patreon in September. Okay, so I can have a user list. We can go in here, we can add a couple members. All right, and now we have a list of users. Let me jump back to our share here. And I can say new group. I can add this group to the share. And then if I want to filter and just see who's a part of that group, we can do that. If I try and remove a user that's attached to the group as part of a user that's attached to the share as part of a group, we're going to get a message saying he's a part of the group or part of the share because he's a part of the group. Tongue twister. All right, awesome. All right, so my files are done uploading. So now we can go ahead and activate this share here. We can see I'm given a URL. I can copy and I'll show that in just a second. We can also trigger emails to every recipient on this list if we wanted to, or we can just trigger one at a time. And I'll share that email with you guys in just a second as well. Okay, so here's a little preview of what an email looks like from the share. Nothing crazy, you know. Download link. You can actually control what these say. Of course, I've got a test email here, but you can control the text inside of this, and you can add more. If you add a description to the share, which I'll show in a second, you can add more information into this email. Let me minimize that. Next, let me show you guys what the actual share page looks like. All right, we can see here the share page from the URL, whether I open from the email or this link, they're the same. And then we can enter one of our emails here. In order to authenticate, and I can get the list of files. And here we can download them either as zip files or we can download files individually. If one of the users I shared files with, right? So for example, coolguy@test.com, if he goes and creates an account on our website and he signs in, he can view a list of all the shares you've ever shared with him from here, and he can always open them right from here and get right back to the share page. And it's free. He doesn't need to do anything or anything like that. It's just another way he can access all the shares shared from our service. I think that's all there is about sharing. Last, we're going to jump into, I believe, the last part of our software, which is settings, which there is quite a few different settings in here. There's a lot of stuff with appearance. We can change the images, the quality of the thumbnails. If you want them to generate faster, you can control that. If you want to have them use less space locally, you can do that as well. It's another reason to reduce them. You can change all the colors around your thumbnails. Now note, if you do that, you're gonna have to regenerate them, which, you know, if you have 10,000 thumbnails, that could take a while. So keep that in mind. You can enable 3D previews and hovers, and there's just a lot. I don't know that I'm going to cover everything, but definitely come take a look through these settings. There's different settings for imports, default categories. There's external hot folders as well. Categories and tags, default print settings, default printer settings. If you want to set a default printer, if you have, 10 printers, that might help you. You can configure all your different slicers inside of here if you want to do that. So another thing to note about this program, this is good. When you close this program, it doesn't actually close. It just minimizes and sits in your system tray. One of the reasons it does that is because of file syncing. I think if you don't use cloud features, you can probably come in here and just toggle this off because it will be irrelevant to you. But if there's a lot of uploading going on, especially if you've uploaded a lot of files or you're downloading files, I didn't want you to accidentally cut off that process and maybe delete a file locally when the application is closed and then you don't have a backup of it. But I think that's about it. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for checking out the software and supporting it. If you guys have any questions, please email me. You can tweet at me on Blue Sky. What's it called? I think it's called here. But yeah, send us an email, support@3dprintmanager.com. And I'd really appreciate that. Thanks everyone and have a great day.